When was the last time you paid $1 million for something? Like, these are big numbers. No one ever said, I wish I didn't buy that house 50 years ago. If you can comfortably afford the house, you can comfortably put the money down, you can comfortably pay for it every month. And I think that the only way to get to the next level of finances is to have risk. You know, what's the risk of doing it and what's the risk of not doing it?
Brian, you have a huge experience in real estate. What would be the biggest things you got out of real estate, and how have your experience in real estate, how has it helped you in right now as in breakthrough consultant, or also within your own life? Right?
Yeah. So it's a great question. I mean, you know, it's interesting because I did a lot of real estate in Brooklyn and Queens. I have dealt with many different people from many different countries. I always tell people I've sold a house to everyone from every single country, every religion, whatever it is, it doesn't matter, because everyone, you know, there's someone from everywhere in Brooklyn and Queens, right? We could agree on that.
Okay.
So I think it massively helped me see how people live, really truthfully. It also has helped me just get a lot of different cultures. I've speak with a lot of different people. It's fascinating. I always liked different cultures growing up. I have friends that are all different cultures, all different over the world. And so with real estate, it's an interesting thing because you have that there's a house, you have that there's a product, you have that there's this thing that you're buying, but there's also this sense of like a spirituality sense where it's like, it doesn't feel right. Like you've heard people say that, like, you know, the house is nice, but it just doesn't feel like a home. So there's this spirituality part of real estate. There's this feeling about it. So it's like you can sometimes walk into a house and be like, wow, I could just see myself living here. That's another part that's interesting. And another part that's interesting with real estate is it's big money. There's a lot of limiting beliefs that pop up. There's a lot of real estate's an interesting thing. I mean, it's not rare that. When's the last time you paid $500,000 for something? When was the last time you paid $1 million for something? Like, these are big numbers. And so I think
it's usually like a one in a life
exactly
for many people.
Exactly. So I think that that's another interesting part of it, because you're talking about something that's so massive, and it's one of the few times in most people's lives that you really are. And so I think that in itself is just really interesting for me, you know? And like right now, for example, people talk about interest rates in America. Well, interest rates are going up or going down, all this stuff. And once again, I really like to help people because I'm a believer in real estate because it's real. I'm a believer in Bitcoin also, but it's nice that real estate is real. And so like, just for example, people sometimes are like, oh, well, I'm waiting for the market to go down, or I'm waiting for the interest rate to go down. I'm waiting. I'm living in this future. Now, sometimes there's good time. There's obviously better times to buy than others. No question. At the end of the day, if it makes sense, you're going to have to pay something to live anyway. If you have a job, it makes sense. You can afford it. Obviously get the best price, but no one ever said, I wish I didn't buy that house 50 years ago. So even if the market goes down, if the market goes up, if the interest rate goes down, if you're in it for the long haul, chances are you're living somewhere anyway, probably better than just paying rent. And I feel like you don't know what's going to happen. Like, I'll give you an example. We're going into, you can go into weird markets. So let's say you're waiting for the interest rate to go down or the house to go down, but then let's say, God forbid, you lose your job, you get laid off. So now you can't get the house because you're laid off. You know, there's so many variables. I always say it like this. If you can comfortably afford the house, you can comfortably put the money down, you can comfortably pay for it every month, it's probably not going to hurt you in the long run. This is not a stock. You're not day trading. So whether the house goes up or down in the next year or two, if you're keeping it, you're probably good. So I think that there's a lot of things. And also, you know, a lot of times people have to see the numbers. It's one of the few things that people actually have to see numbers. Most times in life, we don't see numbers. And so, you know, like, just because the interest rate, let's say, is going down 1/4 of a point, how much is that really changing your life? So, you know, I think it's a very, very good thing. I think it really helps people. And I like also about real estate is that there's so many things that are created from it. It's one of the few products that when a house is sold, think about how many people are being benefited. You're getting new furniture, you're doing repairs, you're literally stimulating the whole economy. There's so many people, the ripple effect, right? So it's a very interesting thing.
No, of course. I mean, and it's one of the things that have been going on for so many years, and it will still be going on. Real estate. Just one thing you said I think interesting. I want to understand more. So buying a house, of course, for many is a big decision, right?
Yeah.
And it's a lot of money. I want to ask you, how is the experience of dealing with all these different people that see the risk in a different eyes, and how has that led you? What did you make out of it? Because of course you were like really close with the thoughts and the questions and all of these things that come up to people's lives. So what would you say are thoughts and questions about risk that are limiting, or which ones are the ones that actually make sense to have?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, it's interesting because good things happen and bad things happen. And sometimes someone could buy a house, let's just say, because we're talking about houses. You buy a house and it turns into a crazy place like Miami. And you bought a house for $100,000 20 years ago, and now it's worth $10 million or whatever crazy number you want to say. And then there's other people that buy a house and they go into foreclosure, they can't afford it, and they rent it out to people that don't pay them, and they have problems, right? So I think that calculated risk is the important thing. And I think that the only way to get to the next level of finances is to have risk. If you don't want to have risk, it's okay. You can get a job, a regular job, a teacher, a police officer, whatever it might be. You're going to get that steady income. But if you want to take risk, that's how you're really going to get out there. By putting yourself out there on social media, by starting your own business, by buying a house, if that makes sense at the time, right? Buying a rental. I think that a lot of times when it comes to risk, people think like, oh, this is going to be the thing that makes all this happen. And usually it's not. Usually it's many things in a row. Usually it's many things. And when you look at people that are super successful, you see that they've taken risk many, many times, educated risk. So, when it comes to which questions to ask about risk, what's the risk of doing it and what's the risk of not doing it? And having backup plans, don't go into something where you just once again, this is also faith and worry. Don't go into something where you just oh, everything is going to be 100%. That's not good either. That's ignorance. No, let's go into it that where everything is going to work out. Everything is going to be great. But if it doesn't, let's have a plan B and C in place.